You are listening to the sounds of the Right On Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 4 of 30 Minutes to Get Back, a podcast where we cover the Peter Jackson docuseries Get Back 30 minutes at a time. My name is Chris, and as always, I am here with AJ. Hello, AJ. How are you doing tonight?
Chris, I am doing well. I'm happy to talk to you about this topic, the Beatles. Welcome, everyone, to 30 Minutes to Get Back. Yeah.
Tonight, in the 30 minutes we're going to cover tonight, it kind of seems like musically they're locked in and they're coming along and songs are starting to take shape. They're playful and they're productive. But when the conversation turns to planning for the live show, everything grinds to a halt and no one seems to be on the same page. And it gave me this thought that they're really great at being the Beatles, but they're terrible at being Beatles Inc.
Yeah, I like that. We saw that when they did the Apple Music or Apple Corporation, where they were losing money doing that. The intentions were great. Makes total sense to me. It wasn't making business sense.
Yeah, they didn't have the discipline for it.
Yeah, I think the discipline, or even I think if they had the discipline, I think they just didn't. It was overwhelming. I think it's like opening up in a restaurant. Like, you're going in with the odds against you already, and I think that's the music business is the same way.
Mm-hmm. It also seemed like it was like a room full of idea men, but nobody doing anything practical.
Yeah,
they had all these grand ideas, but nobody really wanted to do put their nose to the grindstone, so to speak.
And we're seeing here, because these are working class guys. Again, my mind is blown that they're showing up at these early morning hours to do this, but we can see the Beatles are willing to put in work. I think we're surprised by, like, hey, if Paul McCartney said, I'll give you the chance to get studio time and all this stuff, are you willing to bust butt? I think there's a lot of times where people are like, oh, wait a minute, I really got to work at this? Like, yeah, man, you got to work at this. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we get back into talking about this week's 30 minutes, there were a couple of things that we weren't able to cover last week. And I thought maybe we'd do a quick hit on the fact that we played Maxwell Silver Hammer, and we really worked on that, which was interesting because after that big Paul and George dust up, it almost seemed like that song kind of rejuvenated everybody and made everybody feel a little bit, more connected and engaged with the music.
I could definitely see Maxwell Silver Hammer, if they perform this in front of a studio audience inside, this happening. I just want to know, and please write in, if the Beatles didn't get cut off by, the police on the rooftop, were they going to perform Maxwell Silver Hammer? Were they going to perform some of these other songs? So I'm interested in that. We find out later that I believe Maxwell Silver Hammer was very expensive to produce. And I think I mentioned this last time, where the music, especially like Paul McCartney stuff, it sounds like, hey, I'm an elementary school teacher introducing kids to music and teaching them, like, these are the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s of how to write a song and shift from one thing to the next. So it's very enduring, where, like, sometimes the Beatles are seen as naughty, whereas, like, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, you know what that's really about, right? But then they're doing all this kind of innocent stuff with just the music. This sounds like music that can go into a children's show. This is the same band that gives you the Yellow Submarine. Like, again, like, come on, kids, all sing along. So it's very interesting. We talk about this all the time, their range.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point. And, I never really thought about it, but yeah, Maxwell Silver Hammer does sound like a song where, like, every kid in the elementary class gets something to bang on, and you just do the song and you let them hit it, and it just teaches them the early love for the music. That's a great point. After that, after Maxwell Silver Hammer, John plays them a demo of Across the Universe, and that'll show up on Let It Be, but it almost sounded like it was done. when he was playing it for them before they started playing together to try to figure out anything else they could do to the song. But everybody looked really like focused on this song. It seemed like everybody was feeling it.
30 minutes, 30 getback@gmail.com. Please write into us if you saw this particular footage, and if you know, it seemed like John Lennon, like, hey, I got this demo, I brought it in. It appeared, I don't know if it was B-roll and it was misleading, it appeared as if that demo was on a vinyl record. And I just want to know, wait a minute, is that what I saw, or was I hallucinating? So I would like to know that. And I believe that John Lennon said that some of the inspiration for this music is like kind of just tuning someone out as they're talking to you, and you just have this kind of slip of consciousness. And that's definitely how this song reads. But I'm not saying that John Lennon seems kind of distant and like unentertained or unenthused about the recording sessions, but I bet this is like a big wake up call where when he presents this song, they're like, whoa, like, you fooled us. You seem like you were not into it, but this is really some crafty stuff ready to go.
Yeah.
I loved it. What do you think about it?
I thought it was great. And, it was interesting. I've always kind of read the lyrics to Across the Universe when he sings, nothing's going to change my world, a little more defiant. Like, no matter what you throw at me, you're not going to change the way I see the world. Because, John's always about peace and love. And so that's what I always thought about, this kind of transcendent consciousness that he tries to have. But when they're fooling around and playing, he adds, I wish it effing would. I mean, he says the word. I'm not, I'm not going to mess with our censors, but he said, I wish it effing would. And it kind of flipped the song from spiritual to weary to me, because all of a sudden it was like the universe is expanding. He's becoming more connected with love and peace, but his real life isn't catching up to that kind of enlightenment. And it's almost like I'm looking for this thing to change my life, and it's not happening. And nothing I find is changing my world. And all of a sudden it became a sad song to me in this moment.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. And it's interesting because they're about to go into a new decade. We're talking about the late 60s where it is just chaotic. And I think if I were their age or younger at that time, I would think there's no way out of this, right? Like, there's no way out of all this chaos that's happening now. And that trip to India really changed these guys. I mean, it changed George Harrison's life when they were filming Help and they did scenes in India. It totally changed his trajectory with faith and songwriting. And this is I just think what a great song to present. Like, hey fellas, check this out. What do you think about this?
Yeah. So now this episode that what we started on was day 5. Day 4 ended. They were running through Rock and Roll Music, which was the Chuck Berry song that they covered. And they opened their final tour, I think, in 66 with that song. And then they roll into day 5. And it's really funny to me to see them kind of discussing last night's TV shows. And, in your mind, these are rock legends and they sound like kind of like old men, like talking about the documentary they saw on the newsreel. And out of that, George, he found some inspiration. And what song did he get inspired to write when he was watching TV the previous night?
I Me Mine, which was mind blowing for me because listening to the Beatles, I always picked up on, it's about ego and fighting ego. I remember reading about George Harrison explaining, you're steady battling that throughout the day. I lost my keys. I'm hungry. I think my spouse is angry at me. So you're always in that mindset. So I totally understood that. I understood, maybe he's calling out other band members because they have big egos. But I never knew the part about like, oh yeah, I was watching this documentary and there's this waltz and all that. Because this song, there's some waltz stuff going on in it. But it was kind of sad to me how it really felt like, I think if I was watching this in real time back then, or I was a fly on the wall in this, I would have thought like how it's presented and how it's received. Oh, they're not going to record this. What did you think about this whole presentation?
Yeah, he seemed very self-deprecating about it, right? Didn't he say, "Oh, I'll just toss it out, or I'll sing it in the bathroom, or something"? He made some sort of joke because I guess he wasn't getting the reaction maybe he hoped he would.
Yeah. I think also too, I think maybe he felt vulnerable, because you got to think about that too. Like, all right, I'm in this band and there's John Lennon and Paul McCartney. So I'm about to present this to them and they think that they're like expert songwriters. I wonder how this is going to go off. And like when he's performing this in front of Ringo and Paul, he's slouched over, he's looking down at the floor. It's very, and I'm just like, because I'm a big George Harrison stan. I freaking loved it. So yeah, but it just really felt like I'm surprised that this made the album, and I wish that maybe it would have made the Abbey Road sessions, because maybe there have been some extra texture, no pun there. But there's another version where I think if you get one of those, the anthology CDs, where it's like they did the first verse again at the end and the song's just a little bit longer. And I'm like, yes, I'm all for that. Yes.
And it is a great song. It's one of the first songs I remember really loving on Let It Be when I was a kid, listening to it. It hooks you in. It's a great hook.
Yes. And then,
and now to see like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, and then you get the parts that it sounds like, oh, I could tell probably Paul McCartney added this part too, and then it goes back to the quiet part. Like, it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. It's great. And even though the song kind of feels like he's making a commentary on the band, they're all kind of light though. They're still kind of just running through everything. I mean, this day to me seemed like the most playful they've been.
Yeah.
They're refining some of the tracks. They play Two of Us, Don't Let Me Down, I've Got a Feeling. They do Maxwell Silver Hammer again. Paul's doing a goofy voice and singing Stand By Me. John and Yoko are dancing. John sings You Win Again, a country song. And it's almost like they're having a party more than anything else. And there's a lot of laughter and smiles. They're really having a good session. And then they shift back to talking about the live show in this moment. And it's like they all go to their four corners. And it made me think of I Me Mine again, because when they play together, they're the Beatles. And when they're planning, they're four guys with their egos. And not even in a bad way. Like, I'm not even saying that they're kind of, their ego is self-important. They're just very strong-willed people who have their own vision of what their art should be. And they go in their four corners and kind of do that.
Yeah, I think like what you're saying, Beatles versus Beatles Inc., where it's like, hey, I'm glad you guys had your fine art session, but now let's talk about some business. I think also dread comes in and their central nervous system, because they remember, because, John, he went off and he's done some stuff. George Harrison performed in America. But like the last time when we performed with the Beatles, it was chaotic, the global tours, all the screaming and yelling. So I think it triggered their central nervous system, like, oh, okay, go into shutdown freeze mode, because we're going to perform in front of people again. And I don't know if when they did Hey Jude, that live performance, we shocked you guys and you didn't know we were coming. But this is something where there's a deadline, aka brick wall, like aiming at our face, and we know that's the destination. So yeah, and they may be thinking also like financially, because we got to put up a lot of money for this, and we're going to play the Taj Mahal. Like, wait a minute, what are we talking about? I do want to say with the I Me Mine, there's, when you have one of those anthologies and there's one of the outtakes, George Harrison, like, he makes this Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mitch, and Titch reference, where he says something like, hey, this is Mickey, Titch, and Beaky. Dave D and Dozy couldn't be with us. And at the time when I first heard that, I had no idea what he was talking about. I just thought he was making some type of joke. Then I found out, no, that's a band. They have the song Hold Tight. I found out about it through a Quentin Tarantino movie, but yeah, it was that 60s British pop stuff going on. I loved it.
That's great. Now, when you talked about the Hey Jude, it seemed like a lot of them were sort of in the mood to turn this into a smaller thing, almost like I think George even suggests they just play for like 10 people in a nightclub. And the director's the one who keeps pushing them to do something big. What was his name? Michael Lindsay Hogg, is that right?
Lindsay Hogg, where he's like, it's got to be big. You guys are great. Everything you do have to be wonderful. You can't do independent movies anymore. We got to go huge.
And it seems like Paul retreats a little bit on this day. The previous day that we covered, he's really involved in the planning. And here, whenever you see shots of him, he's working out Let It Be on the piano. And John is talking about like the big pieces of plastic, right? It's like the set design, and they talked about, what was it called, Around the Beatles? It was like a live event that they did, or a show they did where they were kind of in the round almost, right? And I think we saw some footage from that.
Yeah, I don't think that footage was the Washington, D.C. footage, but was it? I can't remember. What was interesting about that was the first time we saw John Lennon on camera really being into the like production business part of this. Because remember, at first he was just really quiet and it was just Paul McCartney. And on this, it almost seems like Paul McCartney's like, yeah, you know what? I think I know how I can go solo. I think I can figure out how to be bigger than the Beatles.
And that's funny because the following day, I get really strong vibes that whatever happened between him and George and all that, that was kind of like the last straw. And when he said, what did he say last week? Sometimes he feels like it's 3 against 1.
Yes.
Because day 6 starts and he shows up with Linda Eastman, who at this point just she's a photographer and she's been around the music scene and she's taught everybody from the Rolling Stones to Aretha Franklin. And obviously she'll marry Paul and become Linda McCartney and they'll play together. But it was just interesting that she shows up now and she's almost like Heather to his own future.
Yeah.
And they even have him playing Another Day, which is a single, I think, that he releases. It's one of his solo tracks. So just interesting to show that. And it's almost like he's got a he's got a foot in the future and a foot in the present.
Yeah.
This moment.
Macca. Ram. Is Just Another Day, is that on Ram? I'll look it up later. But that was
we'll
shocking
have to look it up.
too.
I think it might have been added to Ram, but I believe he released it by itself, but then it got added to later pressings maybe.
So that's interesting how he writes this in 68, 69, and it doesn't even appear on McCartney. It appears later, so he's like, no, I'm going to just keep this in the pocket. That blows my mind.
Yeah. And, that was just one of those, moments where we're getting a lot of Paul now.
Yes.
He's working on The Long and Winding Road. That's a song I don't always put on, but I do recognize how just absolutely beautiful it is. It's just not a song that makes my constant playlist. How did Long and Winding Road strike you when you first heard it and now watching him work on it?
Long and Winding Road, I listen to that when I know I'm going to listen to the Let It Be album in its entirety. But me just going to, let me put on Long and Winding Road. You know what? I think from this point on, during December, I might start putting it on. Like the winter months, I think I might, like November, December, I think I might start doing it then. The Long and Winding Road.
That might make sense.
We'll see how, when they label, in the future, we're going to see them label, we will see this band perform Long and Winding Road, and they will have the caption, "This is the recording that made the track." And it's like John Lennon's just sitting there drinking wine and eating a cookie or something, and seems disinterested because he's playing the bass on it. So it's like, But because Long and Winding Road is almost kind of, it's almost like one of the hallmarks of the album. As far as like, sometimes when I think about Let It Be, I think about that song. What's interesting is when George, when he presents I Me Mine, he goes like, hey, is that grammatically correct? Like I'm singing right here, flowing more freely than wine. Like, is that like, and it's just funny that he would even think to ask that, or how I might get judged if this isn't grammatically correct. And so I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of that I thought with Long and Winding Road, because Paul's working the lyrics out with Mal Evans, and he's saying, what's the right way? I'm waiting here. I'm standing there. He's trying to figure out where to put the words where they sound right and they also flow. But I agree with you. Long and Winding Road is definitely one of the emotional cores of the Let It Be album.
That's what I meant. Emotional cores. Yes.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about what am I insinuating if I say standing here, and what am I insinuating if I say waiting here? And just little stuff like that where you think like, there's no difference to it, but yes, it is. Like that final product, and when you put it out there. Another thing too about when they were talking about performing live, they're like, you guys did that 4 years ago, but you were young then. We're 28 now. You can't do that now. So again, we think of a lot of times when people say the 60s, the 90s, and like 1991, 1999, they're two radically different things, but we just lump them in this one decade. So the fact that they're 24 and 28, we see the visuals where they look stylistically different. The music does seem worlds apart, but it's just like, it's shocking how like 4 years, that was a generation.
Yeah. It's crazy to dissect that, and just to think about like what that time frame means. Yeah. Now after that, I think they're doing some Abbey Road stuff, right? Doesn't Paul starts to play Golden Slumbers?
Yes.
And what I noticed in this moment, and they also do Carry That Weight, which Paul says he was writing for Ringo and he was trying to make it kind of like a funny song for Ringo to sing, which blew my mind, because we're talking about emotional core. I mean, Carry That Weight into the end is like the emotional punchline of Abbey Road, and the idea that this was going to be Act Naturally Part 2 for Ringo, it blows my mind.
We're always read it as like, boy, you got to carry that weight. Like, man, I think I could write a whole album myself and be great, but I got to carry the weight of my other bandmates and all this stuff. So I'm thinking of it from that perspective, but the genesis of it is, wait, this was going to be like one of those funsy songs for Ringo? So yeah, it's very interesting. Again, we say this a lot, but the privilege of getting this footage and finding out stuff.
Yeah. And it's also interesting that you see how many bits and pieces and fragments of songs that they have. And you realize how that Abbey Road medley kind of gets, formed. Because they've got all these little songs and they don't know where to go with them. And it's, boy, you got to carry that weight. And that's kind of all he had to it. And they folded into Golden Slumbers. And it's amazing to see it this early on being planned to be separate songs. And really, it's just a tiny piece of a song that they end up using later on.
Love it.
Then they do another tune, right? They're playing what do you call it? Palace of the King of Birds. I don't think that's anything. I think that's just them messing around in the studio again, because I couldn't find any information on it. I don't know if it pops up on the anthology. I imagine it does.
Okay, now that I was not familiar with. So some of this stuff always, especially when they credit all 4 members, I'm always like, who named that? It must be like an estate or something, where it's like, we're gonna play this on the DVD. We have to give it a name. So I don't know who's involved in it, especially when all 4 of their names are on there. That's when I'm like, yeah, that's some post. post stuff going on
Yeah.
there.
I mean, they do have, especially, with Abbey Road, they have some songs with some weird titles like The Sun King and
Yeah.
things like that, where you're like, all right, they just don't know what to call these things.
I got to look back into that, yeah, because sometimes I'm horrible with song titles.
Now, out of those songs that Paul's doing, he's doing Another Day, he's doing Let It Be, Golden Slumbers, Long and Winding Road. Um, did it give you any kind of feeling that he was kind of fragmenting out from the rest of the band, or do you think he was still kind of focused on, we got to get this done?
I think a little bit of both. And it's interesting, again, you got to remember, it seems like they're recording, you can relate to this. Like, it seems miserable. Like, talk about they're in that barn, that studio. It's cold outside, and like just another day. And, the long and winding road. So look what mood is putting him in there. And like George Harrison, I Me Mind. And that documentary they were watching where it was all those people ballroom dancing and they were in sync, but I guess it was Andy Warhol's like, I'm just going to paint Campbell soup over and over and over again. That's social commentary. So yeah, it's like, it's not fun what's happening here. And like you're saying,
no,
with John Lennon changing just a word or two with Across the Universe, again, a dread. So good Lord. And we're going to get to a point where it'll be the same songs, but just because an event changed, it'll change the meaning and put out of all of this music.
And it definitely does feel like he checks out, and I get what you're saying, where it's kind of both, because and this place that they're doing it in is not helping them. Even when they're talking about doing the live show there, they want to kind of bring the ceiling down. They wanted to make it warmer, and they weren't sure if they could. It's like it's draining the life out of them.
It was interesting going back to how we're going to choose the audience. Like, will it be a lottery? Or are we going to do it in England? Will we go to another? If we go to another country, will we vote folks from England there? So that was very interesting. That they were. What kind of audience are we going to have? Will we just show up somewhere and wow them with new songs? Yeah.
And it's interesting. I don't know if you remember, there was the part where you find out that they all have kind of names for each of them, and they're naming them after countries.
Yeah.
Like they're the UN.
Yes.
And Ringo's Russia, I think. And it's, in the middle of the Cold War. So it just made a real impression. Like, these guys are having these negotiations, and it's fraught with tension, just like being in the UN in 1968 is probably the same way.
Very interesting. Very interesting. They say Russia, not Soviet Union.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But even though they're in all of this kind of tension, and they can't agree on the scale of the live show, the location, the look, songs, the music keeps moving forward. Paul works out a bunch of songs, and the band plays a bunch of songs, and in all honesty, they probably have about 10 new songs that they're working on at this moment. And it just goes back to that they're great at being the Beatles, and they're not very good at being Beatles Incorporated.
They need Mr. Epstein for the business side of it.
They need Mr. Epstein. Wow. They need somebody.
Yeah. And yeah, to get it together. And that's why, we're going to find out in the future where they're steady getting their own managers and all this. Like, maybe they can take me in the right direction, but yeah, you got to remember at the same time, even though they got beards and all this stuff, these are young men that wouldn't mind having guidance or mentorship. They like having George Martin there. So, yeah.
Yeah, they definitely, I think they even mentioned how they're all just like 28 and George is a baby. And
yeah,
So they're not ready for, for this level, as far as the business goes.
It's going to be interesting to see in the next 30 minutes of this documentary, what direction are we going in? Because again, I know the outcome, but watching this, I'm just in dread mode with them are you guys going to finish this product? But like we were saying, when they were in Beatles mode and playing the music, it seems like they're a band where it's like, if we perform this 20 times with each other, we're good. Like we got it. We don't need to keep going over this, even though we are, but we'll be ready to go. It's just, can we get it together? And this is a freaking reality show because it seems like it's not going well. Final thoughts about this one, Chris?
Not much more to say. You can tell that they're on the cusp of a breakup, but they're also so good at playing music and create music together. It's such a wild thing to witness, especially taking it as we are 30 minutes at a time, so you can sit with what's happening instead of just moving straight into the next moment. And you really do feel that tension, that kind of overhang of the building. You can feel it, and you can still really just get your socks blown off by the music.
I can see how if they have like 3 sparks a day, that's enough to make them go like, okay, you know what? I kind of dread coming to work today, but there were like 3 ideas that really got my blood pumping. I'll come back tomorrow. And that's the vibe it seems like it's going on right now.
Yeah.
So guys,
and we're only in day 6, right? We're only in day 6.
Day 6, January. Guys, let us know your thoughts about this 30-minute segment that we recorded and that we were discussing on the Get Back documentary. 30 minutes to get back. Email us, please, at 30getback. 30getback@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm AJ.
I'm Chris.
Beatlemania.
And all right, we'll get back to you next episode.